Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today, we're diving deep into the world of web development, exploring the fundamental languages that power the websites and web applications we use every single day. You probably already know we're talking about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So whether you're an aspiring web developer or just curious about the tech that makes the internet tick, get ready for a fascinating journey through the evolution of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Our story begins in 1991 with a guy named Tim Berners-Lee. He was working at CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, and he had this idea. He envisioned a system for sharing documents and information electronically across different computers and networks. Sounds familiar, right? That's because he called it the World Wide Web, and it was revolutionary. See, back then, the internet as we know it didn't really exist. There were networks, sure, but sharing information between them was complicated and clunky. Tim Berners-Lee's solution was HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. HTML is actually pretty straightforward, even if you've never written a line of code in your life. Think of HTML as the skeleton of a web page. It's the basic structure, the building blocks that tell your web browser, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, what content to display and how to organize it. We're talking headings, paragraphs, lists, images, links, the stuff that makes up the DNA of any web page you visit. In those early days of the web, HTML was pretty basic. We're talking really simple web pages, mostly text-based with maybe a few images thrown in. But it was enough to get people excited. The idea of sharing information so easily, of connecting people across the globe, it was groundbreaking. And so, the web started to grow, slowly at first, then exponentially. HTML was great for structure, but it lacked the ability to add visual flair or create interactive elements. It's 1995 and the web is evolving fast. We're starting to see more and more people online, and they're not just passively consuming content anymore. They want to interact, they want to engage, they want websites that feel dynamic and alive. Enter JavaScript. Created by a programmer named Brendan Eich while working at Netscape Communications, JavaScript was this scripting language that could add interactivity and dynamic features to web pages. Suddenly, websites weren't just static pages anymore. They could respond to user input, update content in real time, and even play animations. Imagine being able to click a button on a web page and having it instantly change the content without needing to reload the entire page. Or picture a simple animation that plays when you hover your mouse over an image. These were the kinds of things that JavaScript made possible, and they completely transformed the web browsing experience. Before JavaScript, if you wanted to do anything interactive on a web page, you had to rely on server-side scripting, which meant sending requests back and forth to a server. JavaScript, on the other hand, ran directly in the user's web browser, which meant that interactions could happen instantly, making websites feel much faster and more responsive. It was a game changer. Of course, like any new technology, JavaScript had its growing pains. Early versions of the language were a bit rough around the edges, and there were some compatibility issues between different web browsers. But despite the challenges, JavaScript quickly gained popularity among web developers. By 1996, the web was starting to look a little more interesting. We had HTML for structure and JavaScript for interactivity, but something was still missing. Websites were still pretty basic, visually speaking. They lacked a certain polish, a way to truly customize their look and feel. That's where CSS, or cascading style sheets, came in. Developed by Håkan Wyum Lai, CSS gave web developers the power to control the visual presentation of their websites. Think fonts, colors, layouts, backgrounds, borders, all the elements that make a website visually appealing and engaging. Before CSS, if you wanted to style your web page, you had to use HTML tags, which were really designed for structure, not presentation. It was messy and inefficient. CSS changed all that by separating the content of a web page from its presentation. Imagine being able to create a separate style sheet, a set of rules that dictate how different HTML elements should look. You could define things like font styles, colors, margins, padding, and even the layout of your entire web page all in one place. Then, you could apply those styles to your HTML document, instantly transforming its visual appearance. This separation of concerns between content and presentation was a huge deal. It made it much easier for web developers to create and maintain websites, especially as websites became more complex. CSS also made it possible to create consistent styles across an entire website. The introduction of CSS was a major milestone in the evolution of web development. It gave web designers and developers unprecedented control over the look and feel of their creations. So, there you have it, a quick trip through the history of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. From the early days of simple text-based web pages to the dynamic, interactive, and visually stunning websites we use every day. It's been quite a journey, and it's amazing to see how far these technologies have come in just a few short decades. As technology continues to advance, who knows what the future holds for web development. One thing's for sure though, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript will continue to play a central role in shaping the internet of tomorrow. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our deep dives into the future of these technologies. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this trip back in time. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the history of web technologies. Stay tuned for more tech insights and updates. Until next time.